I think that we are ready to start right now. Good evening to everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight to assist to this presentation about Vivian Maier. I know that behind my blind screen, there's many people interested in Vivian Maier, and I hope we will go through a very interesting evening. Of course, you can ask questions that I can see on my screen, and I will go along with them when they arrived or at the end. We will see. But I mean, we can also start a conversation in that way. So this presentation will allow us in a way to approach different facets of Vivian Maier's work and life, which is one of the most fascinating cases in history of photography. And I had the chance during more than 10 years to work on and to go very deep, I think. Also, I mean, this conversation, this presentation tonight is directly linked to the fact that Thames and Hudson recently published in English the book that we did last year with La Réunion des Musées Nationaux, which is that book here that you can see, and Thames had done a beautiful version in English. So before we start, I'm going to share my screen with you, so you can, we will go into that conversation, into that presentation, as we would visit an exhibition of Vivian Maier, and specifically the exhibition we did last year at Musée du Luxembourg. So I share my screen with you, and here we are with our Vivian Maier. So let me just introduce myself. I am Anne Morin. I'm the curator of all this exhibition of Vivian Maier since I think the first one was in 2013 in Spain. I run a company based in Madrid. However, I'm French, named Dichroma Photography since 2004. And we produce, we invent, we realize exhibitions of photographer we like, and many times about women photographer of the 20th century. Because sometimes, at least we have the visions that maybe women photographer need to be, or to get a little bit more weight in a way in history of photography. That's why, well, we work on other projects. Vivian is of course one of them, and probably the main one, but well, not the main one, but Mary Ellen Mark, Margaret Watkins, Ruth Orkin, Jessica Lang, contemporary photographer. We also work for men photographers such as Robert Doisneau, Sandro Miller, Pentti Samalati, etc. And well, just a screen on our website of what we do and what is our purpose. Just one little anecdote for you to know how I arrived in Vivian Maier life. It was just a coincidence. It was 10 years ago. It was in 2011. I was in New York, and I had an appointment at Howard Greenberg Gallery just to see pictures of something else. And at the end of my meeting, the director, Karen Marks, told me, well, I'm going to show you something. We just received this new work. It's about someone we don't really know who is she. Imagine that even in 2011, John Maloof was just discovered this work 2 years before. And he was about to produce this Finding Vivian Maier documentary three years after. So, I mean, we were really at the beginning. And I've just seen 8 prints, modern prints, and I say, oh, we should pay tribute to that woman. And that's it. And then it was just the beginning. And then the year after, I came back and I did a selection. I had slowly access to part of the archive because we were just at the beginnings. There were some legal things that had to be settled also at that time. And we began our tour of our first exhibition, which was called Street Photographer. But really, 10 years after, and I would say after the big investigation I did during 3 years, specifically for this big exhibition we had last year in Paris at Musée du Luxembourg, that we are all going to visit right now through this PowerPoint, this document. I think that I first had, in a way, a very, not a superficial vision of the work, but maybe just part of it. I really needed to spend these 3 years inside the whole archive, put everything together, sat in the middle, listen to the work, listen to the pictures. They had so many things to say, see all the film, listen to all the reels, I mean, the soundtracks she's been recording. I mean, I think we had 300 hours of soundtracks, 300 Super 8 films, 120,000 pictures, which is huge. And I've been looking at this just after this happened. This is an extract of the film of Finding Vivian Maier that John Malouf, who discovered Vivian's work, did as a documentary.
Paradoxical. Bold. Yeah.
Mysterious.
Eccentric.
Eccentric.
Private. She was a very, very private woman.
I never had any idea she took pictures.
She would take photographs, many, many photographs.
She would never have let this happen.
Is there anything that you wish was done differently then?
Sure, I wish I would have found those negatives instead of you.
So going into Vivian archive for this exhibition, specifically in Paris, and this long investigation needed really not only to see each pictures, each films and all that archive, but also all the material that we had access to. All these little elements, all this little collection she had, because she had a kind of tendency to accumulate things like a kind of rag pickers. I mean, this idea of this Parisian figure of the people in the street gathering all these objects that are not useful anymore. The chiffonnier that we said in French, which was a very important figure in the 19th century in Paris. So if she was a rag picker, I had to sort out everything, and every single element I've seen was really important to take in account, because a practice of photography also was in a way to collecting the world, and not only to capture, but also to restitute in a way, or to draw a portrait of a contemporary time. So each information has been really important. And specifically here, we have a kind of collection of the books I found in our archive, and which were very interesting to see. I mean, Berenice Abbott, for sure, at the end of her trajectory as a photographer, which was more or less between the end of the 40s until the very last picture she took were around mid-90s, which is almost 45 years, which is long. So at the end of a trajectory as a photographer, she really dedicated her time taking pictures of architectures and objects, forms, and there's no more stories, there's no more narration in a picture. And really, I think that Berenice Abbott has been a huge influence for her. And also, maybe you see it on the screen, but I found that book of Thomas Struth, Strangers and Friends. And this book is probably from the late 70s, early 80s. And I mean, it's fascinating that Vivian Maier could have access to this photographer who was maybe not as much known at that time. Oh, someone is asking right now if there was an exhibition in UK. Yes, we just finished a very successful exhibition in Milton Keynes, and then this show is going to travel somewhere else. It's now in Frankfurt, and then I will tell you more about this. But I would like to continue our presentation just to give you some clues about who she was, because I think that if Vivian Maier is so popular right now, it's probably because there is a specificity, there is a kind of association of several concepts that together are very strong. First of all, I think that we have here a very strong archive. The archive is really dense. I mean, many good and excellent pictures at the first sight. And if you see the contact sheet, you see that many times she was doing 1 or 2 pictures of the same thing. She did not have capacity to take a complete role just on one subject. So an archive very strong, very powerful, very well settled. And I think that time transforms this archive in art. Simply, a kind of sedimentation process has been happening at that time. Second thing is that I think we have someone who is really mysterious. At the same time, she's mysterious, and at the same time, she was an invisible woman who suddenly, I mean, it took 10 years at least to go from the invisibility till one of the most important icon in history of photography. So that process is really interesting because it's probably one of the only woman photographer and amateur who is now seated on the row of the top photographer of the 20th century. And I would say without any fear, just next to Robert Doisneau and just next to Cartier-Bresson. I mean, she can be very quick and fast as he was and captures this decisive moment. I mean, we have many and plenty pictures that can justify this. So this process is really interesting. And today I would say that in history of photography, Vivian Maier, at least behind her, not only she represents all the women photographer that contributed really to settle history of photography or to write the beginning of history of photography or to continue something, but also I would say that Vivian Maier represents the amateur photographers. And we don't have many examples of amateur photographers settled in history of photography, maybe Jacques-Henri Lartigue or some of them, very few. But she really, she's a very strong figure settled now, and she represents many different kind of people. I'm sure many of you can really represent themselves or find a reflect of themselves in the face of Vivian Maier. So you see here on that screen, just I would say the main line of biography. She was born just in a very low social class, and in New York in 1926. And her mother was French, her father was from Austria, and both families at the early 20th century immigrated to US in order to try to find a better life. Well, unless for her it hasn't been the case. But my conception of photography, why she did or she took so much photographs, this is probably a question you ask yourself. And I really think that for her, photography was her territory where she was free, where she could be herself. It was in a way a room on her own. I think this is the right title for, just to make a wink to Virginia Woolf. Yes, it is a room of her own. I think photography was the place where she can be herself, where she can just touch with her fingertips the identity she never had access to. Remember that she was a nanny. She was living at the house of the others. She was at the service of the others. She was no one for the society of the American dream. She was belonging in a way to the dark face of the society. And I think photography was the only way for her, at least, to have a relationship with the world and to exist, simply to exist. That's why we have to begin our show by the self-portrait. Now we get into our exhibition in Paris, which is now on view in Seoul, in Korea, and which is a great success because Asian people really enjoy photography, and specifically, I don't know why street photography, but however, in Vivian's case, I would not say that we are only talking about street photography. I mean, Vivian Maier is at the confluence, at the cross between French culture and American culture. I think she's at that point between humanism. She's close to Robert Doisneau for me, and she has this capacity to wait. She has this capacity to just let the real appears. And she has also the other side coming from US. I think, yes, she's a street photographer. Yes, she could be a Gary Vinogrand. Yes, she's fast. Yes, she's active. Yes, she's dancing with among the crowd she's taking pictures of. And yes, she's aware of everything going around her. So let's come back to the self-portrait and the beginning of our show. I think one of the particularity of Vivian Maier's work is probably the fact that she's one of the photographers who really developed a language around the idea of self-portrait. Why she took so many self-portraits, and why Vivian Maier became such a big phenomenon right now in our society. Probably because she arrived right now, she appeared 10 years ago, and she settled now, and she's really important for young generations, probably because, of course, of that question of how she auto-represents herself, how she does those self-portraits. I would not say that she's at the beginning of the selfie. It would be maybe too simple, but probably the fact that her archive really came from the very deep of the history to the surface of the visible is through this idea of the self-portrait. So many young generation now recognize themselves in that necessity to probably to have a kind of proof that they exist and to be witness of their own life. I think that Vivian did so many self-portraits just also to make sure that she was there, she was existing. So you see here, I would say many kind of formulation of what kind of vocabulary she's using she has plenty of source, I would say. She has plenty of formulation. I would say since the more elemental one, which is the shadow projected, which is, I think, for her just enough to say, I'm here at that place, at that time, and it's enough. And I don't think on the opposite side, which would be this kind of picture you have here, just on the second row on the right, kind of not a physiological self-portrait, because I don't think she was really interested in giving or in recording the time or recording how a face is changing through the time or the years. Remember that, I mean, her trajectory has been long. 45 years is a long trajectory. She's not really interested in that. I think she's much more interested in just dropping in the pictures some clues that she belongs to what she's taking pictures of, or the scene which surround her. And there's really a big richness, I would say, about how she just self-represent herself. So it's not just only the concept of the self-portrait, I would say. In this exhibition, we also included and made many correspondences with color photographs that many times are simultaneous with the black and white pictures. We will see more or less if Vivian Maier began in the late 40s while she's in France living with a mom in La Vallée du Champsaur. She had access to a very simple camera, which was a Brownie Kodak, very, very simple. I mean, if you do 10 pictures, I guess one is good, but this camera belonged to her mom, and she began to take pictures in France with that camera. Then when she moved to New York in 1951, where she lived until 1955, she had one of her first Rolleiflex, square size. And some years later, in around 1960-65, she will begin color. So in this exhibition, we really put together that correspondences while she was taking a picture in black and white, and she had access to a Leica, which was a 35 millimeter. Sometimes she's doing pictures in black and white and pictures in color. So, well, the archive is at the first sight, seems to be very untidy. But as I proceeded and as I've been looking and analyzed all the work, I really understood that she was really, how can I say that? She comes back always to the same thematic: self-portrait, portrait, still life, gesture, childhood, color, cinema. And then during 45 years, she will get back all the time to the same thematic. And that's really interesting to see how she proceeds. So of course, we began by the self-portraits that probably made her maybe different than to the others photographers, because she goes very deep, I think. But of course, I think her main territory was the street, and the street not in whatever kind of neighborhood, I would say in a poor neighborhood, not always, of course. That remembers me a sentence that Ellen Levitt, who was also a photographer that was at the same time in New York, said. Ellen Levitt, it's not literal, but the idea is there. She said, I take pictures in the street because this is where life is. I don't take pictures in the right neighborhood because there's no one in the street. They're all in their apartments. And I don't take pictures neither in the business centers or neighborhood because people run too fast. So really the predilection place where Vivian Maier will always find something to see is the poor neighborhood of New York and then Chicago. Probably because she has that precise quality that she shares with kids, with children, which is just to underline or just to find the little extraordinary thing among the extraordinary. And this faculty she has to see that little things probably comes also from the fact that she was constantly surrounded by kids. And probably we adults could walk in the same street at the same time and we would not see even nothing, or at least not the same thing as she used to see. So, I mean, for me, it was not a coincidence, the fact that Vivian Maier was a nanny, simply for this, because she has this capacity to imaginate, to see other things. And also that remembers me another sentence by Tarkovsky, the Russian filmmaker, who said that, again, it's not literal, but the sentence says something like, poets and children don't see the world, they discover it, and because they have always this capacity. So she will go through doing hours and hours just facing the life, taking pictures of little things that are always about to disappear. Little anecdotes, I would say, but slowly she will go deep into the scene and she will go closer to what she sees. And we will see how first she began in New York, particularly between 1951 and 1955, I think, when she really settled visual language. She began having a kind of very open look, a very open angle, very narrative pictures. And then slowly we will see how she gets closer and she gets closer, and she will get closer really until a very high level, almost touching abstraction. And this will be the end. I mean, the end, it was the end of the show, but it was also the end of her language. In a way, she will be kind of exhausted, and she will go very until the end of her language. So she takes pictures of people like her in a way, and she really have a communication with them. No, it was wrong to say that she take a picture of people and she leave. No, not at all. If we see the contact sheets, she really gets closer to them and she really have conversation with them. But she let us a very interesting clue. And for me, it was important as a curator really to see what was the choice of Vivian Maier. She printed over 5,000 pictures. So she edited herself her pictures. However, she never ever printed any contact sheet. But she had the capacity to know exactly that her picture were good. And even on the envelope of the laboratoire, she said something like, good job, good work, good pictures. So she knew before even she saw the pictures that they were good. So when she was taking pictures of people in the street, many times, except the first woman on the left, the first row, she was taking pictures of, I mean, she probably recognized and have a kind of communion between, and complicity, why not, between them. And what I find beautiful is that all that poor people, I would say, that as her don't belong to the American dream, and they belong, as I said before, to that dark face of this brilliant and excessive dream, make me remember of the pictures that Eugène Adjet took at the very beginning of the 20th century in the peripheral part of Paris, and he made a beautiful series called Les Aulniers. So what I found beautiful is that you see in this portrait of that people, poor people, that they keep in a way a kind of dignity. They don't smile, they don't pretend to be someone they are not, or they don't try to seduce anyone. They're just facing her, the eye in the eye, I would say. But it's very strong. I mean, the power of the picture comes from this. And just a little anecdote, just to tell you, while I had the chance to go in the archive at the University of Chicago, John Maloof, who discovered the archive, made recently a donation of many objects and pictures. And I found that Vivian Maier used to collect pictures of that identity pictures from the 19th century of anonymous, of course, anonymous for her, because there were not pictures of people that she knew, but I found many connections between the construction of that studio portrait and the pictures she was taking in the street of that people. So really, I would say she had really a kind of memory of eye. So we go a little bit far in our investigation, in our presentation. So we've seen that self-portrait, the street life, the portrait. Then we go like a high, a little bit closer still, and the gesture. And this is very new for me, because I never understood or never saw that part in her work that I discovered recently during the lockdown, by the way. I had time really to go deep. That made remember me that all that ends in that picture we see remembers me, of course, of Robert Bresson. Many times the end as a real protagonist of the film of Robert Bresson. And I'm quite sure that Vivian Maier was aware of all that generation of filmmakers, knowing that Vivian Maier used to go to see films at least once per week. And she had a really great visual culture, as we've seen through the books, also through theater, through magazines, and through cinema. So I was mentioning one picture that made me understood that Vivian Maier had a very strong capacity to preview, to view, or to anticipate the moment. Could it be a decisive moment? Why not? But if we look at this picture, I don't know if you see my little flesh here, but on the row down, both women who are doing almost that same gesture. For me, these pictures open really to a new chapter in the work of Vivian Maier. First, yes, she had the capacity to preview, because you have to have a really quick and fast eye to see that, or to see that it's going to happen. And here I find another element that is really, really interesting, is that how there's a kind of dislocation of time, of fragmentation of time. And it seems it could be, in a way, two moments, just put it next one to the other. And we begin here talking about cinema. We begin talking about time, about continuity, and here at that time, a picture is not any longer, I would say, a detonation, as Walter Benjamin defined photography, detonation. It's not a detonation here. We have 2 times in that picture, which opened to the next chapter, and we will see in a few moments. So little things, she's not afraid to get closer. She's really getting into reality as she could get in a way into a materiality. It's really interesting. And I always thought, and that we see that in her films, really, that she's not only seeing reality through her eyes, but it's a question of her whole body. And she's really seeing with her whole body, particularly in her Super 8 films and 16mm films. Oh, sorry, we have here another chapter, but we will come back just after to the cinetism, how she get into cinema with still photography. Childhood, of course, her life, first model, little ones around, and I mean, I would probably say something like a main inspiration, and because she has the capacity really to adapt the same frequency of her eye to the kids one, and really it's a strong thing. When we will get back after to the next chapter I was talking about, we will see how she have access. She's playing all the time. I think she had a lot of fun while she was taking pictures, while she was filming, and it was a game. It was probably the childhood she never had herself, and she had to live it through all the little ones she was taking care of, or sometimes not. I mean, down in the first row on the left, these kids are not the kids she was taking care of. And I think even on this picture, none of them were kids she was taking care of, but her eye probably went there. So here we are. This is, for me, probably one of the most fascinating parts of Vivian Maier work. I would say it's a chapter in between photography, in between cinema, in between still, in between movement. This is where there's a collapse of temporality, and she really begin to develop something like a kind of motion. Yes, she's about really to get to the age of cinema, and this is when she's going to begin. I mean, we were talking about abstraction a while ago, but if you see that picture on the first row down on the right, it's just beautiful. It's just a pulse of light. It's musical. It's just talking about cinema. It's a fragmentation, repetition, and continuity in a way. And for me, there's a kind of I would say adequation of the time. I mean, she develops that a very experimental part while she is living at the Gainsbourg family. The Gainsbourg family was probably the time when Vivian Maier was the happiest. 1956, Chicago, until 1967, she's taking care of 3 young boys. She feels really like the second mom. She had capacity to not to interfere, but she exists. And she's playing, and she loves her kids, and she's playing until really changing, I would say, the rules of photography, and she really begin to include in her picture that element which is proper to cinema, which I've said before, it's not only a detonation, it's much more than that. It's a kind of explosion of times in a way. So this moment of the Gainsbourg families, 56, 67, also is a time when she will change the size of her camera. She will begin to color, to photograph in color in 35 millimeters with her Leica that we had also in that show. And she began really cinema at the same time. So we have here, again, a confluence of several territories which make her language excessively complex and rich. And I mean, for me, this is really the heart beating of the archive. Then after, of course, the cinetism, we afford the full dimension of space, time, and color. And I would really make a connection with John Cassavet, for example, with youngest filmmaker from La Nouvelle Vague also, and this capacity in a way to be between document and fiction. I mean, there's really plenty of things to say about that. But for me, her cinematographic language is a kind of prolongation of the photography one. And we saw in the exhibition many times she was going in the street of Chicago with a Bose camera. And first she was filming. First she was in a way trying to make her own space, or how can kind of domestication of the space. She was filming. And then once she saw the picture about to raise, the photographic pictures about to raise, then she stopped and she used to take the picture. So many times we have both things at the same time. And that's really interesting to see how both works together, and both are a different level and has different use and purpose in a way. So that's really interesting. Color photography, as I said, arrived more or less at the same time in around beginning of the 60s. However, she tried with a Rolleiflex square size, with a Rolleiflex since 1955 in color, but then after she will buy a Leica small size 35 millimeters, and of course she's really using color for her own specificities, which for me has something to do really with music, rhythm, volume, and deep. I mean, of course, sometimes she's taking pictures and maybe there's something that cannot justify the fact that it is in color. But here we have a selection that is clear. Oh, I'm sorry, I think there's pictures that does not complete here. So she's playing again. There's something really experimental in her color. And for me, I think that she missed 10 years to really get until what she was looking for. If Vivian Maier is known for black and white work, and she's really raising to the top and she's really strong, I think that color is almost there, but she missed time, I think. And but it's really interesting because it gives us really another view of her vision of the world. So that's also very interesting. And the very last part, I would say, which really is a coincidence with the last part of her trajectory as a photographer. As I said, she's really getting closest and closest and closest to what she sees until really really make the forms empty of its own signification, of its own narration. Look at those pictures. Sometimes you recognize an element that still has sense, but it's just only about abstraction. It's just only little elements or forms that don't have anything to tell, just it is just as it is. And then after, we see that the very last year, at the end of the 80s, at the beginning of the 90s, she's not much more interested by the others, by these little inflections, by the narration, by the little story she can find. She retires slowly. I think she exhausted all kind of formulation in her photographs, and she's taking pictures, of many times of newspaper on the floor, and she taking pictures of kind of actuality that she does not belong to any longer. And then she stopped, and then she disappeared in the dark. And I'm sure you have a question about would she be happy about what we are doing? Yes. She let the door open. She never destroyed her work. She left it alive, I would say, in a storage during many years until in 2007, sorry, she died in 2009. In 2007, the storage where she left all her things, her photographs, her life, I would say, put everything in auction. So this is how, this has been the end, but the beginning of something else. And for me, when I saw the first work, the first pictures in 2011, and I said, we have to pay tribute to that woman, it was really something that I understood that behind her, there were plenty of other people that really deserve to be seen, really deserve to be known and to share their work with the public. And at some point, sometimes I think we have to repair history, or to continue something that never happened. And we I think we do it really with respect, and we never invent a Vivian Maier that does not exist. Let me just end this presentation with John saying
Another thing I found in Vivian's stuff was this letter. It was written in French, and it's talking about the photography lab in France.
Oui, vous les avez pas, celles-là.
Ça, c'est la lettre.
Et mon fils va la lire. Oui.
You can do like this.
Ah oui, oui.
The letter starts out, Dear Mr. Simon.
C'est mon père, alors, oui.
Souvent, je regarde mes vieux chefs-d'œuvre du Champsaur comme on m'avait agrandi, une carte postale. Ça me donne beaucoup de plaisir de revoir ces beaux paysages, et ça me fait penser à vous. Voici mon problème. Je me demande si nous ne pourrions pas faire des affaires malgré la grande distance qui nous sépare. J'aime voir du joli travail comme le vôtre, et puis je suis aussi difficile, comme vous devez vous en souvenir sans doute. Alors j'ai eu l'idée que peut-être je pourrais vous envoyer mes clichés agrandis. J'ai des piles de bons clichés. J'ai pris avec mon nouvel appareil allemand pour le flex. J'ai fait beaucoup d'expériences depuis mon retour aux États-Unis. Et si je dois les dire, moi-même, elles sont pas mal. Moi, je dis une pile, je veux dire une grande pile. À propos, je ne veux pas de glace passage car je préfère l'effet de déglacé. Usez le même bon papier que vous avez usé pour les autres cartes postales. Enfin, de façon, laissez-moi savoir ce que vous pensez de mon dernier et mon idée.
So you see here, if Vivian Maier 10 years ago appears like a small rhizoma, I would say that right now this rhizoma is a big tree that continue to grow, continue to capture light and to breathe. And really, yes, I see a question right now from George, who's asking if she would have enjoyed this success. I don't know, but what I know is that probably what is important is simply that she's not alone. She represents many photographers, and it's important to do that memory work and to share and to make alive work and to just make sure that these pictures continue to enlighten the world, I would say. And also George was asking about this book. This is the book that Thames and Hudson just published in English, which is a catalogue of this exhibition, which is right now around the world, and which is for me a kind of Bible. I'm very proud to have taken part of this beautiful adventure, because really it's a fascinating world. It's not the end. An archive is alive, an archive continues to live, and this is our work, the curators, really to take care of. Curators, that means to take care of something. And so, I think we have been, a nice walk into Vivian Maier world and archive, and it's for me fascinating, and I hope it has been also with you. I'm going to just share with you some question. For example, Sonia is asking, how do you decide which photos to select for exhibition, and how are you able to organize so many exhibitions of Maier work? You know, at the beginning, really, I wanted to put a face on this invisible figure, and to settle the name of Vivian Maier in history of photography. And I think that I tried really to draw a kind of cartography, a small cartography of what was the archive with the main thematic. And how did I choose the pictures? Just because pictures, you just have to trust your instinct, your intuition, and to listen what a picture has to say. And also, I really wanted to choose pictures that she could herself have chosen, following what kind of pictures she printed. So that was important also for me to really, in a way, restitute a spirit of what she would have chosen herself, and not go very far in a kind of analysis or lecture of her work. Really, just to be very careful with what we were doing. And Stephanie asked, do you know why she never published her photographs or offered them to a magazine or newspaper? You're raising here a question that has to do with how a woman in the 50s could be an independent photographer. And many times you see in history of photography that a woman photographer needed many times a mentor figure, a male figure just close to her, just to make sure that they can raise and to be independent. That has been the case for many others. Or if you don't have a mentor, you must be very rich at least. But Vivian Maier did not need, I think, to share her work with the others. It was for her. She was building something for her before anything else. And just want to mention one thing which is really important too. This exhibition, this book also is taking part of a beautiful program called Woman in Motion, supported by Caring, which aim is really to enlighten women into the field of art. And we are proud really to have this support of Women in Motion, because this is what it is about. So I think that we did that presentation. I hope you enjoy that time as I did. I could speak about work during hours. It's really fascinating. It has been really a great time for me. So thank you so much.